Hello and welcome to the Dune Minute Podcast, your place to deep dive minute by minute into the cinematic adaptations of Frank Herbert's world of Dune. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And I'm Zach.
And today we're going to be talking about exactly why Duncan, Idaho is going with the advanced team to Arrakis. We're on minute 11 of the 2021 Denis Villeneuve version of Dune. And we're here to
masterpiece,
kind of get an idea of what's going on in the world. So we start this minute with Paul still talking to Duncan, asking if he's going with the advanced team to Arrakis the next day. How far in advance is Duncan going with this advanced team? You said last episode in the books it's what, couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's explicitly said, but it's I don't know, say it's like 2 weeks. I mean, we get that later in the book or in the movie.
Yeah,
and I think that timeline, it tracks exactly, if not exactly, very close to the books.
Got it. In this moment, Paul expresses his desire to go with Duncan, probably because, as we saw earlier, he seems bored.
Yeah, I had that in my notes too. He's just like, let me do something.
For something to do. Yeah. Duncan immediately denies this request because he doesn't want to be court-martialed.
Which I think is a very fair response.
Yeah, look, you don't mess with your boss's kid and just be like, I'm just taking this kid to this random planet. Hope that's okay. I feel like there's probably not a lot of room for asking for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Especially, given the severity of everything that's going on in the universe.
Could you imagine just doing that? Like if he just like snuck on the ship, or Duncan, even with Duncan's blessing, just got on the ship. And later was like,
called his dad like, hey man,
WTF, where is Paul? Oh yeah, he's already on this planet. Yeah. We see how Leto reacts later to Paul being in danger.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine the absolute shitstorm that would fall on Duncan, Idaho if he were to do this. So yeah. I think his, are you trying to get me court-martialed? Response is perfect.
Yep.
It's exactly what should have been said.
Exactly.
Probably nicer than what should have been said.
Yeah, he probably should have just been like, are you fucking stupid?
Yeah, I have in my notes, it seems like to me, it seems like Paul is getting a little too big for his britches. Like his ego is like, I could do this, man. I'm here. I'm ready for it. When he's, again, a spoiled rich kid from a planet that wants for nothing.
Sure.
So yeah, he doesn't know what hardship is. He's learned about it. And he's read a lot of books, but he has not exactly lived it at all.
He had his own podcast even.
What?
It's the audiobook that he had. I kept on referring to it as his podcast.
That's right. Right. Yeah. So he wants to get on the action. He's a little just too eager in my book, or my opinion.
He's supposed to be what, like 16, 17, something like that in the books. So yeah, I mean, he's bored.
Yep.
We'll call it what it is.
I made a note here to say, Paul's hair looks very damp. Whenever we see him, it's
all
just
of Caladan is.
I know, and it's just like it's such a funny contrast to how we see him later in the movie, where his hair is like frizzed out because of the dry.
Yeah,
very subtle detail that I think is really cool and very good of them. I don't know if it was intentional. I hope that parts of it was, but you'd have to imagine.
I'd imagine so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just a neat thing to say.
Speaking of Paul's hair being damp and everything, that's the other thing too. Paul's lived his whole life, I would assume, on Caladan. Like, yeah, I'm sure he's probably like gone to other planets and stuff for.
I don't think so. Things. No, I think they mentioned that this is his first time off world.
But this boy wants to just like go to a desert.
Yeah.
Early,
he's got the
without having any of the like things that he would need, just because he's like
he has the unearned.
What a great way to die!
Yeah, right. He's got the unearned confidence of any affluent teen, honestly. So he starts explaining his dreams to Duncan, and here we get another dramatic Zendaya look back.
Well, so before we get the dramatic Zendaya look back, one thing that I noted down is like it seems like Paul trusts his best friend with like stories about his dreams more than he does his own mother. Because like earlier in the breakfast scene, Jessica knows that Paul has these dreams and stuff, but like he clearly didn't want to talk about it with her. But he's willing to, open up a little more with Duncan about his dreams here.
Yeah, I think there's, good reason for that because he knows, where his mom comes from.
Yeah.
He knows that she's a Bene Gesserit and that all these things in his dreams, they mean something completely different to her than they do to, his bro Duncan. So yeah, if I was in that position, I would also be a lot more reticent to tell my mom about that stuff than I would be Duncan, who's just
hey mom, I keep having dreams about this girl.
Yeah. Duncan's probably like, sick, dude. That's awesome. I mean, that's pretty much how he reacts to the dream later.
Yeah.
But
even still, like Paul stops for a minute and is just like, like you can tell he's hesitating to like continue talking about his dreams and stuff with Duncan.
I think it does a good job of illustrating how just like uncomfortable he is with these dreams.
Yeah.
And I think from here going forward, I'm kind of going to stop referring to them as dreams and just referring to them as his visions.
I think that's more accurate.
Yeah. I mean, that's because that's what they are. He thinks they're dreams now. And like they're referred to as dreams here. But as time goes on, like we start to see, no, these aren't just dreams. These are his like prescient abilities starting to come out, or he's like a latent prescience.
Yeah.
Do you need to sneeze?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No,
I saw you grab the shirt.
No, I just do this.
Okay.
Shut up. But yeah, so Paul, after hesitating for a moment, is like, I've been having dreams about Arrakis and the Fremen, and subtly in the background, as he starts saying, "I've been having these dreams," we hear the main leitmotif of the movie.
I noted that as well.
Played by some kind of wind instrument. And then we get a hard cut to a shot in the desert with heavy footprints in the sand.
Yep.
And a figure kind of like stumbling their way through. Clearly someone that doesn't know what they're doing in this desert environment, because every other shot we've seen of the Fremen, they've all been very agile and nimble and stuff.
Sure.
In this case. So we'll soon learn that this stumbling figure is Duncan Idaho.
Wait, the person walking on top of the sand dunes?
Yes.
I thought that was meant to be Zendaya.
No.
No?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's Duncan Idaho.
Interesting. Okay. Tell me.
As the scene goes on, Paul says, that he's been having these dreams. Duncan says, okay, so. And Paul tells Duncan, I saw you. And then we get a hard cut to Duncan in a still suit, slob squatting with the rest of the Fremen.
Yep.
But there are some major differences with how Duncan is being portrayed here versus the rest of the Fremen. And this is how I realized that with the shot of the man walking away from the camera with the heavy footprints in the sand, there was Duncan. Because in this scene, aside from Duncan not having the blue eyes of Ibad, he also has a very loose
hood
head wrap.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas all of the other Fremen's head wraps are very tight, very neat and organized and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's clearly the off-worlder.
Yeah. In the scene where he's walking away, it's that very same loose head wrap. And he's kind of doing like this, like he clearly doesn't know how to move through the sand as
that makes a lot of sense.
As agile as a native Fremen inhabitant of Arrakis would. But you are right. We do get a random like shot of Zendaya staring at the camera
like right after that. So I thought it was like camera panned up to that character from behind, and then we get Zendaya turning around. So I thought that was the same character.
Nope, we're just getting random shots of Chani. Okay. But we really need to go back and get a count up to this point of how many random Chani shots there are, and just keep a tracker.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that before the next episode. Maybe. I love like after he gets done telling it. Or do you have anything else to say about that?
Well, I was gonna say with the shot of Chani, she's looking directly at the viewer, Paul, in this case.
Sure.
But like in addition to, so going back to like Duncan and how he's being portrayed and everything, I noticed too that he was the only person in that group that actually had blades drawn, whereas all of the other Fremen had their Chris knives stowed away. Some of the Fremen had it across their chest like you see normally, but one of the Fremen, I'm sure this is just like a minor detail that they only made for the movie, had his Chris knife in a sheath along the side of his calf.
Oh.
Just a thing that I noticed when I was, going back and looking at this.
I'm sure there's no rules to where you carry it.
No, I just thought it was cool.
As long as you put some blood on it before you put it back. Which is an internal rule they don't even follow throughout this movie.
Yeah. But yeah, so Paul tells Duncan that, he has these dreams or these visions of Duncan on Arrakis. At which point Duncan then turns to Paul and says, so I do find them.
Yeah. Yep. Somewhere in there as Paul is explaining this, I love Duncan's okay.
Yeah.
he's like, what are you getting at, bud? Yep. Like, okay. All right, dude.
Yeah. Duncan says, so I do find them. Well, there you go. That's a good omen right there, right?
Yep. Do you think that Duncan treats these dreams, because clearly he's used to Paul telling him about his like dreams and visions and stuff. Do you think that he treats them as prophecy or just treats them as an overactive imagination? I think I lean towards the latter.
Yeah, I think, and we don't get it in this minute. It's at the start of the next minute, but I think Duncan has heard Paul talk about various dreams and stuff in the past, because he doesn't seem fazed by Paul telling him about dreams now. That he's just like, yeah, whatever. Like this kid just like has a vivid imagination and he dreams a lot or whatever, because he's a kid that has lived a life of luxury and hasn't needed to like do anything for himself ever in his entire life. So he can afford to just sit and daydream.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but I had a note here that, Duncan isn't as invested in the stories of Paul's dreams as Paul might want him to be in this moment.
Yeah.
Like you can see Paul is visibly frustrated that Duncan's just like kind of working on his ship. At one point, like he opens a panel and he's just like doing the Star Trek thing where he's like in the background,
just turning knobs
and pushing buttons,
adjusting technology.
Yeah. I always think of that one scene from The Next Generation, or no, it wasn't The Next Generation. It was the original, where there's a guy who there's no like nothing on the wall, but he's just standing there next to the wall, swinging his arms like he's spinning like giant wheels.
I'm sure they shot like 7 of those episodes in a day. Back then, and they were just like, just do something that looks somewhat useful.
They probably just like banked a whole like slew of various scenes of people running through hallways with urgency or whatever.
Yeah, they got whatever person was delivering the craft services that day, threw him in a red shirt and said, get back there and adjust something.
Just act like you're doing something on this panel here.
I had the same note though. I just said Duncan just seems to kind of roll with it.
Yeah, like
he's just like, all right, man, whatever. Like, it's cool. Thanks for the story. I'll take the good parts and I'll ignore the bad parts.
Yeah. But yeah, the minute here ends with just a shot from behind Paul as we're watching Duncan mess with the panels on his ship, and Paul's very clearly still got more information to divulge, but once again he's being hesitant and he's maybe not wanting to share more than he already has.
Yeah.
But you can tell just from the look on his face that this is important to him. So
I mean, I don't think Paul feels comfortable with these things. He knows he knows they're more than dreams. Or I think he feels they're more than dreams.
Yeah.
So yeah, when he sees, and we'll talk more about this in the next episode, but like when he sees the last part of his dream, like it clearly has shaken him.
Yeah.
And he's very nervous. So Duncan's like flippy into attitude towards this. I'm sure it's just like, I mean, we've all been in conversations where we feel it's very important and the other person is just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I'm just going to go back to looking at Twitter on my phone or whatever.
Yeah. So it can't be a good feeling.
Yeah.
So,
but unfortunately our minute here ends. So we don't know what Paul is stewing on other than the fact that Duncan does find the Fremen.
That's right. So what would you, how'd you feel about this minute?
I mean, if I'm going to be honest, it's more just setting up Paul with his visions and everything. So, 2.5 to 3 Shai Hulud, maybe even 2 Shai Hulud. Like it suffers from Dune syndrome where it's people talking.
Oh, buckle up, buddy.
I know. Once again, we're keeping our meter of our Shai Hulud meter in check here. So I would say 2.5 Shai Hulud.
Yeah. I would even go lower than that. Like, it's not a bad minute per se. I mean, this is still like a good, like,
no minute of this movie is bad.
No, absolutely not. It's, a continuation of our, introduction to Duncan, who is one of my favorite characters in the whole Dune story.
Mm-hmm.
And, we get we dip a toe into Paul's like prescience and his feelings towards his visions. Again, more world building. I think I'm going to say that for just about every minute of this movie.
We're going to be world building up until the last minute.
Yes.
I'm not even joking.
Yeah. So, I'll join you there. Overall, good though. Overall, good.
Sure.
Good deal. All right. Well, anything else for this minute in your notes?
That's all that I have, but we'll be back tomorrow talking about more of Paul's visions and why he's so nervous to disclose this information to his friend Duncan Idaho.
All right. Well,
sorry, Duncan motherfucking Idaho.
Duncan motherfucking Idaho.
Yep. But that's it for today's episode. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
All right. See ya.